And we're back.
You missed us so much, I know.
Yeah. We're back for another episode, and this is gonna be one of my favorite episodes. This is the Talkin' Shop episode, and it is called Sir, how much time is left?
You have to be more exhausted. So like,
Yeah,
sir, how much time is left? It's that sort of like, oh my God, I want to die. Can the game be over, please?
Yeah, and I mean, really and truly, it's not even. It's just a pantomime. You like tapping your wrist, really
as you breathe heavily. Like,
yeah. Yeah, no, and he just gives that little smile, and then does the scrum down symbol.
He does a smile. It's like, the game has been on for 2 minutes. There's 78 minutes left.
Hey, you're looking for the sub. You're doing like somebody please. We'll talk about that though. We will talk about all of that. Yeah, it's gonna be a good episode. This might be a two-parter. I don't know. We just kind of wing this, and it'll either be incredibly long or a two-parter, and I'm happy for either one. We'll see what the Zoom gods allow us to do too. Whether or not we run out of time, then fuck it, it'll be a two-parter. So, talking points. Dan, let's start with the first half. What are your thoughts on the first half?
The first half is always the most fun half because it's the one you actually have energy for.
I beg to differ, but I'll let you continue, and then I'll
I mean, no, actually, sometimes some of the best rugby I've played is when you have nothing left. You just dig deep, and you're like, I didn't think I could do that. And there I just smashed over 3 people and scored a try. What? Oh, now I can't get up.
Well, I mean, if you can save a little bit of energy, I usually get a second wind around the 48-minute mark. Weirdly, it's like my body's like, okay, I guess you just live here now. Here's a little bit of energy, or you stop caring or whatever. And then, yeah, like it becomes I like the second half more, I got to say. Usually because I'm off and someone has subbed in. You've usually subbed in for me. And I get to watch a beautiful rugby game from the side now. But yeah, I get a weird second win. The first 40 is always just absolute murder for me. I love it, but it's deadly. I feel like I was never prepared. Every time I go on, I'm never prepared, And so, I mean, Dan, how do you pace yourself?
I mean, pacing myself depends on how many subs we have. So I used to, whenever I would go into play, my goal was always to play like the full 80 minutes. And partly this was because I was younger and less fat, but also partly because I think I had the wrong attitude, because I don't care how good shape you are. If you're sprinting for 80 minutes, if you're out going full tilt, like 200 meters, you're dead, no matter what shape you're in.
Not including scrums or lineouts or
yes.
tackling or rucking.
So you have to be aware of how long you're likely to play, and then really decide when you're going to be putting in effort. Because a lot of the times, in order to pace yourself, you have to know when your effort is actually going to be rewarded with an effective play. And that can really only come from experience watching or playing the game. And, all those times where you're like, I've got to get there. You put everything into getting there, and then you realize you're completely useless there, and you just like, okay, now I'm going to go over here now.
I'm going to watch that ruck. Yeah. No, I'll post. It's fine.
Yeah. And really, once you get a bit more experience, you can get an eye for, this is a point at which I can like smash into that ruck and either secure it for our team when it wouldn't be otherwise, or steal it from their team. If you watch a lot of professional play, they either don't go into ruck at all, or they go all into a ruck if they think they have a chance at it. Yeah. And if you look at lower level play, there's a lot more like, it's a ruck, we need to contest it, let's go, all go in. And that's a lot of that is just experience of not knowing when you're going to have a chance. A time when the scrum half is a little bit struggling to get it out, and all their like sort of ruck is set in position and just getting a little bit cold and stiff, and then I can smash through that right now, which is really fun, because then the scrum half does not see it coming. He's like, oh, this ruck has been going for a while, no one's contesting it. You just charge right in, knock them all over.
There's a towards them, yeah.
And that is really satisfying. But also, like when you see the time coming down, you're like, I can get there in time, or I can't. And really knowing at what point you need to charge. It's a little bit like, when you're driving, you first see that yellow light and you stop and you're like, oh, I totally could have made that. Like I'm now just sitting here stopped at this yellow light for
Yeah.
like 5 minutes before it finally turns red. Perhaps my sense of time is not the greatest. Yellow lights are for 5 minutes, right?
Oh yeah, you got an easy 5 at a yellow light.
So if you haven't played prop before, really that sort of getting, or any sort of rugby, that sense of when you need to be given an effort, and that's where a lot of pacing yourself comes from. If like have lots of subs, if I'm there and like there are 4 other props who are going to play, like fuck, like even if because every time you decide not to do something, you're like, I don't think I can make an effort here. It's a little bit of a roll of the dice. Maybe you could have, but you want to, like you it's always a roll of the dice, but sometimes the dice are loaded. And what I mean by that is that, sometimes you just have a lot higher probability of making an important play. And how long you're playing determines at what probability you want to go in. If you're going to be playing like 80 minutes, there's no subs, you want to go in when you have a very high probability. And if it's only like you have a 30% probability, like fuck that. You need to save your energy. You don't have any subs. You want to wait for like those times when it's like 60 or above. But if you got like 6 other props there who want to play, like you go in if you have like a 10% chance of doing it. Just like whatever, I'm going to go. There's 6 other props. My goal is to just make as many plays as I can, and then go off.
No. As a disclaimer, though, dear listeners, if you have 6 subs for your props, can I be on your team? Like, I've never had that many. I've had maybe Dan. I've had maybe like 2 other dudes. So from my experience, a lot of the time it's been like, okay, I've just resigned myself to the fact that, yeah, okay, you're playing either 80 or like a little over 40. And fine.
I mean, usually I actually have that as one of my notes for another section. Like, it's like for this is like, it's like if you've got subs for a prop, ha.
Yeah, exactly. No, and I mean, we touched on it like in a few episodes earlier. Like, you will always play rugby if you're a prop. They never have enough, or the guys that they have, or maybe shouldn't be in in the prop position. But what I found is, as far as pacing goes, I've talked about. I've done a little bit of coaching on my son's sides. We talked about the 70%, 80%, 90% rules of when to go for like that and when to conserve energy. But I found like the best thing that I had ever done was knowing when to call, like when to loop around after you do a set piece. So you ruck over, or you take the ball into contact, and you drop down and whatever. Sometimes you definitely want to get up and get right back into the next one, but maybe you loop around. And I found knowing when the time to loop around and when to get to skip a phase and position yourself properly for another phase, like a little bit down the ways, I found is one, it does wonders for your stamina. You're like, oh, all right, here we go. I'm recovering slightly. But also, yeah, you can become that guy who then increases your chances from, like you said, from a 10% to like maybe a 70-ish. 70's hopeful, but and it helps your other teammates too. Like if you're kind of predictable in that respect too, they get to know where you're at, I guess, as far as like your exhaustion level. Because I mean, we've all asked a scrummy to slow down the pace of the game, and he just laughs and shakes his head and says no. But yeah, I mean, sorry, I'm just taking a sip of my wine here.
All right, so that means I have to talk while Caleb gets more drunk. Don't worry. The more drunk he is, the better the podcast will be.
Oh, I don't know about that, but we're gonna find out. Oh, yeah. So now, do you find pacing sets help set tone as well?
I mean, it can. I mean, certainly, but I find that the best thing to do about setting the tone in terms of pacing is to make them aware of what you can do, so you don't have to do it all the time.
No, fair enough. It's warning shots across the bow.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
if you like the first couple plays of the game have some super strong rucks that send them sprawling, and then after that they're doing their rucks really fast, they're just like getting the ball out because they know you can smash in. Great, you don't have to go in anymore. They've already adapted. You can save your energy, and they're freaking out because of you.
Oh,
It's
clever,
perfect.
clever.
And so it's not so like pacing helps us. It's really about like knowing at what you're really good at, what you yourself can make them adjust their game plan doing,
Right.
and then make them do that, and then you get to relax and still be like, yeah, I changed the game here, and now I don't have to do anything, which is always the ideal. Uh,
Well, it's true too. Like my rucking, I've always been high, weirdly high rucking. I do okay, but my strong suit, of course, is scrums. And yeah, like setting a tone for the first scrum. Boy, oh boy. Now we might talk about that later on, but it makes them more reticent, and
mhm.
it's a mental thing, right? Like you crush them just just as a wall of force. I love it. It's, it very much sets the tone. Now it can, it can backfire. They might gird themselves and throw in a bigger boy, but
Mhm.
it's still, I agree. You
I
get a
it,
little worried.
if they still take out one of their like live fast, like props to put
Yes.
in an actual like real beefy guy so they can, hold their strums against you, that's a victory right there. Now you can just be like, well, this is clearly my guy. I don't have to deal with one of those like, 220-pound like props
Yeah, yeah.
who's like really just like a back that's kind of strong enough to go on the front row. Uh
It's true. It's less running. That's for goddamn sure.
exactly. Uh I've definitely made like a someone who really is not big enough to be prop against me go to like back row forward so they could bring in like the old fat guy who really only wanted to play 5 minutes. It was like, you're the only one who can stand against him in the scrums. It's like, there we go.
There we go.
This is another way that you can just like right off the gate set the tone, change the tone of the game, and then you don't have to do as much work. Uh,
Now, on the flip side, I got to ask you, when you come up against, say, in like the first scrum, or say in first couple of lineouts, if they got a guy who is just a machine, or who is just clearly dangerous in against you, how do you cope with that? Like, how do you then recover the tone or set the tone when you're up against that kind of odd? You know what I mean, right? Like,
mhm.
how does that? How do you? What are your thoughts on that?
I talked a bit about that last week with the story of the time that the scrum was really dangerous because they were cheating, and I kept on trying to talk to the ref, and the
Right.
ref never did anything about it. And then they like taunted me for like calling them out on the fact they were making things really dangerous. So then I started cheating back, and things got a lot safer. So
Sorry, what I meant about dangerous is not so much like the physically dangerous, but I mean dangerous to your chances of winning. Like someone
oh,
who's either incredibly skilled or, heaven forbid, larger than us. I've only encountered that twice, but it does happen, right?
it does. I mean, and really, sometimes the things that aren't your strengths can become your strengths. I have played against people who are bigger than me, and it's very rare. But when I do, suddenly I'm like the agile prop, and I can like deke him, and I'm like, whoa, yeah, look at me, I'm a back. Uh,
It's the contextual shift.
yeah.
Okay.
In economics, it's called comparative advantage.
Oh, there we
Maybe you're not the fastest guy, but you're faster than they are.
It's the outrunning the bear.
um, so yeah, that so really you have to be aware of all your skills, and even though you're not the best at something, uh, you everyone is going to have advantages and disadvantages
Right.
depending on their type. If you're against a smaller prop, you're probably going to be a lot stronger than him or her, and but they are probably going to be a lot faster than you. Sometimes, you're up against someone who is uh, just not in as good shape, or sometimes you're just not in as good shape as the other person, and they
Yep.
are stronger than you and they are faster than you. And then what can you do? Uh, sometimes there's not a lot, because because especially when I started propping, when I wasn't as strong as I am now, I definitely came up against some people who were just in better shape than me. They could run faster and they could, like out scrum me. And then what you want to try to do is you want to try to outthink them, because that's what you got left. Do something that they won't expect, they don't see coming, because no matter how skilled, how strong, how fast they are, if they don't see it coming, they can't plan against it. They can't actually counter it. And so sometimes you got to just do something that's really unexpected. That might not be the smartest play, but it's something that they don't see coming, because you're not going to beat them just by, going in playing by the conventional rule book. It's time to just let loose and do something crazy.
You know what? Speaking of that, that's so funny, and it just reminded me. So I remember watching, and I'm sure you remember, Italy versus England a few years back in the World Cup.
Oh yes, the one that they actually changed the rules because
Oh,
of.
because of, right. So Italy had spoken with the ref beforehand, before any of this had happened. And the ref agreed. The ref was like, well, I mean, there's no clear breaking of the rules and there's no precedent set. So let's play this. You know what I mean? And so what happened was Italy did not contest a single ruck. And it left England completely flummoxed, because like what that meant was, well, England would maybe commit a guy or two. No ruck was formed because Italy wouldn't commit. And then Italy would dance around behind and essentially obscure a pass from the scrummy.
Because if the ruck is not formed, there is no offside line.
Right? And which was brilliant. And I'm watching this, and before I sort of clued into what was happening, you could hear, because the version that I found, and you could probably still find it on YouTube, it showed, it had the ref mic'd up and had no announcers. And so what happened was, you could hear the players like not Joel Plaskett. Joe Haskett. Anyways, one of the England guys, the big, tall, blonde fella. Anyways, he's on social media everywhere. He would come up, and Haskell, I want to say Haskell, you come up and you could hear him asking the ref. He's like, "Sir, what constitutes a ruck?" And the ref, in an amazing amount of coolness, was like, "Well, you should really know the rules of a ruck." But it's true, that sort of tactic. Now, Italy was completely outclassed in that match.
Oh yes, I mean, this was Italy has nothing on England. They decided to do something completely crazy, and it semi worked.
Yeah, I know exactly. It sort of worked.
I mean, if they had tried playing straight rugby, they would have been creamed 10 times worse.
Oh, yeah.
They went outside of the box. They did something completely crazy, and they made a respectable showing because of it.
It's true. They will at least be remembered by this one dude in Ottawa who brings it up at any chance he can get, because I loved it. I thought that was so clever in a game so full of rules. To be able to skirt like that is awesome. But that being said, I feel like for us, for the young prop out there, the budding prop, if you will, the chance to do those types of tactics, maybe, and I mean, you can disagree with this, that's totally fine. But I feel like in set pieces, you could probably have a little more leeway with that, because it's a little more thinky time. Less runny time. You know what I mean? Like scrums and lineouts, maybe. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I think that doing the unexpected when you're running can also work really well. I've scored a try against people who are much better players than me, stronger, faster, just because I did something that they weren't expecting. And so like I remember like one of my early tries, I think this was like 2010. So wasn't even 300 pounds at the time. So skinny, like at 290.
Those were the days, huh?
Oh no, I like being the big pro.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're cool.
But yeah, this guy was bigger than I was. He was like jacked as shit. Just basically like he was, military, was able to go to the gym every day for like 2 hours for work. Really great shape. And every time I tried smashing into him, every time I tried playing, I tried to do my usual thing. Like I would fend him, I would try to spin in contact, I would, swerve, and just nothing worked against him. He was reading it all and just every time tackling me. And so I
What did you do?
just kind of like
What did you do?
went
Oh,
at him.
suspense, dude. Sorry, it was
Uh,
just I'm on the edge of my seat.
no, I I just basically like charge at him, and then I'd never done a grubber before. I'm like, I'm gonna do a grubber,
Well,
and
fuck
he's just like, what? A prop doing a grubber? And like
no way.
I didn't know what to do. And he like, and just like, and basically then like I more or less crashed into him, and the ball bounced and like came out, and the rest like, well, it's penalty against him. I'm like, okay. I pick up the ball, tap it, and then just run in. And he's like, so it didn't work, but I pulled the penalty. People just tap the ball and go in.
A grubber and a tap and go?
Yes, and so it just made no sense whatsoever, but it worked.
I love it.
It was a dumb thing that I didn't know how to do, and just like, and because I didn't know how to do it, I looked really weird doing it.
Yeah. Well, and half of it is the spectacle too, because the team's like, "What is happening?" Like, you're looking at something, and your brain is not comprehending it. Wow, that's wild, dude.
And so, I find that like really like it was a game where we were completely outclassed. I think that we lost. The final score was like 130-5.
Oof. You got those 5 though.
We got those 5 because a prop decided that he could not beat this guy using any conventional tactics. So he just did something weird that he didn't know how to do and pulled a penalty doing it. And then was like, okay, I know what to do when there's a penalty. I tap the ball and I run.
I love it, man. That's wild. That's so fun. Oh, one of the, you know what? Actually, yeah, one of my favorite tries that I've ever gotten was not as to be fair, not as spectacular as that, but it was with it was basically provided to me by Phil Calhoun from Philadelphia. Shout out to Phil from Philly, and it was great. He comes up to me and he's like, "Caleb, all right, here's what we're gonna do. I'm going to run it into contact. We're right on the try line. And I'm going to spin around and I'm going to just pop it right to you." And I was immediately behind him. And it was great. So he runs up and I'm running up and I'm like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing. Never done this before. Okay. But, I'll keep it up. And he goes in and it's like okay, my imagination is fairly strong. So I may embellish in my memories. But I remember him charging into like 5 or 6 defenders on the line. And he turns around, and I remember seeing them all sort of splaying out because he like did a really great sort of like threw his back into them, and he just like it's like he like just gave me the ball, and I grabbed it and I spun a couple times, rolled over some people. We got the try, but that's like one of my favorite tries ever, and I'd never tried anything like that. Obviously, haven't since, quite frankly, haven't found the timing. I tried to with you in Amsterdam. I just managed to get the ball away from you, though. It looks very similar when you like right on the try line and then just arms reaching out around. You can't see what I'm doing, but it looks exactly like it.
Obviously, we just need to release this video to YouTube then, so people can see what you're doing.
Right? Yeah, maybe. But either way, like that one, I think we actually still got a try off of that, but it was like 3 phases down. But either way, we were still getting up.
That should be an entire episode on itself. Getting up when you're a prop.
Ooh, that takes half a game, man. That takes a while. It's so far away. The game is so far away by the time you get up. But yeah, so I mean, yeah, unconventional tactics. It sounds like that is a tactic in and of itself. Mm-hmm. So, but on to more conventional. Let's talk about the crumbs and lineups.
I would like to say, when you do an unconventional tactic, like it will fail most of the time. There's a reason why it's unconventional. But sometimes, you're going to fail anyway, so you try something that just might work.
Right.
There's an old saying that the best swordsman in the world does not fear the second best swordsman. He fears the worst.
Well, it's like the U.S. military used to have in World War II. They said, if the enemy can't understand if we don't know what we're going to do, the enemy can't predict what we're going to do. Holy shit. Works 100% of the time, 20% of the time. Oh, man. Oh, yeah. But on to tactics, Dan. Let's talk about scrums and lineouts, buddy.
Scrums and lineouts.
Favorite.
The tactics for those usually depend upon your team's strategy and strengths. I can't really talk about like what are your general tactics for for a lineout. If you're a team of like very skinny forwards, and I'm like mauling it is great, you are just going to get your ass handed to you.
Yeah.
So so a lot of it is just knowing your strengths, knowing your team's strengths, and knowing what the other team is likely to be strong at. If you see have like a bunch of very skinny people in the lineout and they're trying to, like they're able to jump really high, mauling it when you get the ball is going to be great. This difficulty will be, actually winning the lineout because they're so skinny and tall.
True.
But, that's when you throw it straight.
Oh, yeah. The quote unquote straight. I've thrown a lot of balls actually, weirdly, because there was a period where we didn't really have anyone who could throw it pretty well, and I was sort of like the second best at throwing the ball. And yeah, like you could sort of get away with throwing it not quite so straight. But I've always preferred lifting. I like lifting, nice, light, tall, skinny guys, but I'll lift a beefier fella too.
I mean, in terms of how you throw the ball, it's always, like as I told boys in high school, it's if you close your eyes and think of a woman, it's still straight.
There you go, right? It's a matter of context.
I didn't sleep with any straight people in high school. I barely slept with any gay people in high school.
Yeah, honestly, the whole high school hookup thing it's a myth, man. Come on.
No, I know some people who slept with a lot of people in high school, were really good at seducing straight guys. And I'm like, I don't have any desire to seduce straight guys. I don't get it.
You know what? Honestly, on either side of the spectrum, that's a whole lot of bad sex, dude. No one knows what the fuck's happening. No one knows what they're doing. No one's good at it.
I mean, by not having sex in high school, I still had a lot of bad sex. I just had it after high school.
I suppose, but I feel like you could learn faster. You're not an idiot. I don't know. How do you get to Carnegie Hall, Dan? Practice. That's what. We kind of veered off, buddy.
What are you talking about? This is all about rugby.
This is entirely about rugby. I'm now done my wine, and I'm on a Smirnoff Ice Peach Bellini, and it is fucking delicious.
So we're going to be even more on topic after this.
Oh, yeah, 100%, dude. I accidentally left these in the freezer, and they're like a slushy now. It's pretty awesome. Anyways, so lineouts and scrums and all that shit. I love these things. I do love a lineout. I do love a good scrum. I love a scrum more, to be honest. I don't know. What's your preference? Are you a scrummy or a lineouty?
I mean, I'm definitely a scrummer. I like a lineout is I think most fun for the jumper, and I will never be a jumper. I've volunteered to my team every year. Like, I'll be the jumper. I'm pretty tall. Like, I'm 188 centimeters. That's decent. And then they look at me and they laugh. I'm like, what? What's funny? And like, I'm not telling a joke. I'm willing to jump. And they just keep laughing, and I don't get it.
I can't imagine being lifted up like that as well. I'm the same height, and it's just I can't imagine at my size anyone doing that. Quite frankly, two of you.
No, I need to find another prop, and we're going to do that to you.
Yeah. All right,
Caleb, you're getting close to Jesus.
I will be majestic. It's gonna be like watching, that scene where Free Willy was thrown up over the rocks. That's gonna be me, buddy. I'm gonna make the whale sounds, catch the ball, throw it down to that little dude. Was it Scrummy? And no, I would call them all. I've never. Malls are the funniest thing. I like malls out of lineouts, but it took me forever, and no one really told me. But it took me forever to figure out just what to do in a mall aside from push. Like there have been times where I've seen the ball, right? You have to take the ball, and for anyone who doesn't know, I guess, right? If you're fresh propping, if you get into push and you do have a chance to take the ball, you do have to move the ball out, right? However, I would just go in and push, and inevitably we'd move like significantly far, but it would also collapse, and then I have not brought the ball out. Like it took me a very long, sad to say, it took me a long time. No one really explained it to me. I'm a little sore about that because there was a lot of malls I could have won.
I mean, considering, I was on your team, and like,
Uh,
tried to be like a mentor to you when you joined. I feel like that's a personal failure. And you're like looking straight at me saying, "No one taught me, Daniel."
Daniel, through gritted teeth and narrowed eye. Yeah, it's. I mean, I don't hold you responsible to that. That's a coach's job. That's not another prop's job. I mean, we do have some secrets we share. To be fair, right? Like you do tend to mentor a fresh young prop, but that one I feel is
I
more
mean, I wouldn't necessarily have called you fresh and young. A new prop.
fair enough. A new prop. It's true, actually. I only started playing. Fuck me, man. What was it like? It was like 29, maybe 30. I don't know.
No, it was not 29 or 30, because then you would have been playing like in like 2013.
Was it like 31 or 32 then?
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure you started playing, because
It
in
was
like
32. It was 32.
yeah.
Yeah, like almost 32, because that's when the season would have started.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, holy shit, eh? Fuck, feels like forever. But you know what's great? Because I'm a prop, I will get to play forever.
Yeah, I mean, like you can be, like 50 years old, like out completely out of shape, haven't trained in a while. They're like, well, we need a prop. Uh, you still know how to do a scrum? Like, go and do the scrums. Like, I can't do anything outside. I'm like, that's okay. We just need the scrum to be safe. We need someone who knows what they're doing.
No, it's true.
Um,
One of the best people I scrummed against, actually, he was a tight head. He was an old grizzly fella, but I mean, my God, he knew what he was doing. And he was like missing a tooth, and he smoked a joint at halftime. You know what I mean? Dude was awesome. Dude was hard though. Like he was just grizzled, I think is probably the best term for that guy. He was on Belleville, I think he was playing with Belleville. Good dude though, solid dude. But yeah.
yeah. So yeah, but really, I think that lineouts for a prop are kind of boring, 'cause just sort of like throwing someone into the air. And if you do it right, like it is kind of the same every time. You're not really competing against anyone else, and it's not like it's something super hard that you're doing. It's difficult. Like you can't just throw anyone in and do it, because there's a lot you have to do for safety. Um, but you can't, but it's once you know how to do it, you kind of just do it. Like it's not like I'm worried every time I go to list someone, am I going to drop him this time? Like,
No,
no, my number one job is not to drop him.
I have one job.
um, I will say, for like, if you're new, the important thing to remember is you need to be willing to get your face dirty. Like you
Yeah.
put your face right into their ass or right into their crotch,
Yep.
because if you try to do this thing with your arms out, which I see a lot of people do their first time, you have no strength. You're not using your legs. You're basically only using your deltoids to try to lift a person, and you cannot. The number of like new props I've seen try to lift someone doing their arms all the way straight on, they're like, why isn't this working? It's not that I'm weak. I'm like, no, you just are unwilling to get your face dirty. Put your face into their crotch. Now lift. They're like, oh yeah, this works. It's so easy. I'm like, exactly.
Touch the bellies, right? You got to touch bellies with the other prop guy.
Exactly.
And then you're stable, like super stable too.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I would say that's really the one thing. There's a whole bunch of other things you need to learn about how to like place your hands. Ideally, if you're wanting to be a back lifter, you really want to learn how to grab an ass properly. If you're going to be a front lifter, you want to learn how to grab the thighs and really use the musculature as like a handhold. Um,
Which is tough on the skinny dudes. They don't have a lot
it is,
happening.
but the skinny dudes are so slight that you could just sort of squeeze, and then they
There is a
just
trade-off. As long as they're not terribly sweaty, and they're not going to be if they're light, like. But still, it's
they don't work. They're just busy like doing their hair.
like a greased pole. You try to lift that. It's like, oh fuck, man.
um, yeah, I mean, there are people that I've just been like, even with all my experience now, and I can like deadlift 550 pounds. I'm still like, well, I need to short lift you from the front, because there is just literally nothing, and you are just like a greased little monkey, and my hands just slide up as I'm trying to lift you.
It's true. No, it's so true. It's so true. Or you get the guy who's light enough that you. I've had this with Owen, and Owen was great to lift. I really enjoyed lifting Owen because he was tiny, but fairly tall. Not crazy tall though, but he was good. Anyways, I could not lock on to his thighs at all. There's like kind of nothing there, and fair enough. He's a thinner dude. So I would, I'd hook on the shorts, but like I could lift that dude on my own, and it was it was almost relaxing. It just hoof him up, and just like I'm just standing there, just chilling out while he does his thing with the ball and wrestles the other dude midair. Yeah, it's so weird, but it's also strange when you get you're trying to lift someone who's like a little heavier than you're used to, or you're not quite prepared for. They're just somehow denser. They're filled with dark matter or something, and that is surprising too on the line out. You get that little like, if you don't get them up, you get that like little stunted line out thing happening, which is always disappointing. I always feel bad if that happens, and I'm the cause of that. I don't like that. But let's talk about scrums. Let's talk about my favorite part of the game. My favorite part of the game is scrums.
Oh, I thought you were going to say drinking after.
Despite the fact that I am just copiously consuming alcohol here, it's not. No, my favorite part is definitely scrums. I really enjoy those.
Scrums are super fun. There's very, for big strong guy like a prop, there's very little that's greater than just like setting up against a person and then just using all your power to try to twist them into a pretzel.
Oh, it's true. Or even not even just trying to, like, sans, any kind of like strategy, just the fact that you can take everything you have and push it in one direction against something or someone. There's there's poetic about it. There's something liberating about that we just don't get in our day-to-day life, and it's exhausting, but there's a purity to it that I really, really enjoy, because I don't think about anything else when I'm in there. I'm doing it. Sometimes I'll think about foot positioning, whatever, you know what I mean? But like past that, it's just go. And it's like, there's something liberating about that. And it's, and you're all locked in, and, you're all bound in. And I want to talk about binding. I also want to talk about actually foot position too, but we can talk about binding first, but scrums are beautiful. I don't know. What do you think? Just let's talk about the feel of a scrum. Dan, let's T.S. Eliot the shit out of this.
Oh, I didn't expect there to be a poetry test.
I do have the heart of a poet, Dan. So take a chug of liquor here.
I mean, that is quite apt. Most poets.
Yeah. But yeah, like, what do you like about a scrum? What do you like about the act, the sensations? What goes through your mind? Does anything go through your mind? All these questions, Dan. Answer them all.
Yes, no, sometimes. No, a scrum is really great. There's definitely, when you're first starting, a lot of awkwardness where you're so much focused on the technique, and that you're sort of like, am I doing this right? Am I not? What should I be doing? Am I bound correctly? And so if you're new, I would say the one really thing to be important of is, as a prop, your number one job is to protect your hooker. Your hooker is there to hook the ball. If you do nothing else, bind to your hooker, stay tight to your hooker, support your hooker so they can hook the ball safely. And if you get twisted into a pretzel after that, that's okay. You've done your job. And so really for me, what I really like about it is I also like the act of, protecting the hooker, and that's something that's often in my forefront of my mind when I am going to a scrum. I really enjoy being that sort of protective figure. And so that is something that's actually quite motivating for me, is that getting in there, this hooker is going to be safe on my side, and I'm going to do, whatever it takes to make sure they can do their job well. I also really like facing off against other people and just sort of like, I am going to fuck this person up. And so that's the other part of scrumming I really like. I really like just like staring down the other prop and be like, you're a pretzel.
It's already won, man. Why are you even trying?
It's just like, I bring a little bit of salt on the pitch. Excuse me, just 1 second. Yep, there we go. There we go. Okay, now I just like twist you into shape and you're ready to go in the oven.
Just give it some mustard and you're good.
So yeah, that's the thing. So I'm very focused on basically that's the two things I'm always focused on is the other prop of who I'm posing and my own hooker. And I'd say like those are the things that go through my mind. Um, in terms of my strategy, these days I mostly play tight head, but I played a lot of both tight head and loose head. And the strategies are definitely different. As tight head, the best thing you want to do is always really. I mean, one, their loose head is going to be their stronger side of the sun. Their scrum, they're going to have more weight on it. You want to counter that. Sometimes what you can actually do is you can angle yourself out a little bit, especially if their prop is trying to bore in.
Right.
And really, that way you can counter their boring, prevent them from wheeling your scrum. The other thing you can do if their loose head is really trying to use their extra size on you is actually split their loose head right out of the scrum, which is really satisfying if you can do that. They're like, oh, I'm going to bore in on you and fuck you up. And like, oh, you're out of the scrum now. Bye, bitch.
You know what's funny? So from my perspective, I've played more loose head than tight head. I've done both. And boring is one of my favorite things because it feels great. But I have definitely been separated from the scroll. Like, you're still holding on, but if you break that tight bind, like you're saying with the hooker, that is everything. Because if you break that, or someone breaks that you off of that, yeah, you're useless. It's such
You are.
when it does happen, it's crazy. And you're the guy doing it to me, man.
I am.
I'm just trying to bore into your chest. What's the problem? Just get closer to you, man.
A lot of the strategy of the actual like binding and positioning has gone out now. That's very slow,
Yes.
which we talked a little bit about before, where it used to be like you really like smash into each other a bit, and you could really use that little pop to get into an advantageous position. Now I find the best thing to do is actually just as the ball's going in, drop slightly to really and then drive.
Yeah.
And that just like little drop helps me just get my end a little bit underneath them and pop them up a little bit, and really like fuck them up and twist them.
That
I
makes
have
it really
found
hard. I from experience, that makes it incredibly hard to do my job. You dick.
yes, my goal as a prop is to screw over Caleb.
We very rarely, because we're usually on the same side, but we very rarely have faced off. And yeah, Dan's been quite the tactician whenever he does square off against me.
My weakness is always my flexibility. Caleb is much more flexible than I am. I've got the strength advantage over Caleb, but Caleb's definitely got the flexibility advantage. And so I have to really make sure I'm working hard to counter that
Yeah.
when I go up against him. And so that's what often I'll do. I'll often, like, if I'm going up against someone who I know is more flexible, I'll purposefully be higher than I can go, because that way they're going to be underneath me. They're like, yeah, I'm in a good position, and
Oh,
then I'll drop to where I can actually go, and then they and push before they can drop, and then their flexibility can't be an advantage.
that works so well. Having been on the wrong side of that is so hard to counter, dude. You're just like, you go from like, I'm gonna nail this to I am just surviving. You know what I mean? And actually, you know what? We were slated to my team, the Beavers, was slated to play you guys, and I was so looking forward to that. And then, of course, COVID hit and everything. But I was so much looking forward to it because I would have been in loose head. They might have put me at tight head because but when they saw you, they probably would have put me at tight head because they're like, no, we need to anchor this a little more. But I was very much looking, and I was deeply disappointed that I wasn't going to get to play against you, having played with you so much.
Well, I am sure there will be other opportunities that I can put you into a pretzel. I actually, for you, I will bring some salt out of the pitch for the first scrum. Be like, here you go.
Yeah. Caleb, where'd you get that mustard? Oh, it's a bit. We're playing a bit. Now, foot positioning. Here's the thing. This is something I recently recently as in like last 2 seasons kind of thing, sort of figured out, is that there's another foot positioning than what I was doing. So I typically always would be 100% even feet, on one axis. So it gives me 100% a push big strong push constantly, nice and low. Apparently, there's another way to put your feet. where it's more of a defensive posture, and I don't know anything about defensive posture.
I will defensively. You can definitely spread your legs out more to hold more ground and
Right.
really just sort of like the. I have also sometimes twisted my foot to be sideways, so I'm actually like so I'm actually putting all of my studs into the ground while
Right.
maintaining my height, which means you've got no push forward on that, but you can really hold a position.
That's true.
When you know you're not going to win the scrum, your goal is to not lose it, or they've already started pushing you back and you need to stop their push because they can actually push it right into past the try line. Turning your foot sideways can really help with that. Especially that's one of the other ways that you can go wide is you actually get both. If you're flexible enough, you get both feet sideways. You really dig all your cleats into the grass and stop that push. The other thing that you can do sometimes is if you know that you're stronger than the other prop, is instead of keeping your feet together so you get that one quick push, actually take a little bit more of like a sprinting posture, not obviously full sprinting because you're not going to get a power, but having one foot behind the other so you can quickly transition from one foot to the other and really get a steamroll going. Because one of the things about having your feet together is you get a really strong initial push, but then it slackens, and that gives the other team a chance to get their footing. And so there's a lot of times where we would have a really strong initial push and always beat them on that initial push, and then we'd stop. And by actually just getting to your feet a little bit separate, so you can go from one to the other, you can just keep rolling, and they don't actually have a chance to stop you. And
Right.
those are the 3 feet positions I use. Yes, like having feet together for that first initial 100% push, feet parallel, is ideal. But the other ones have their uses.
So I've found, and I agree with you. Um, what I've done is like if my feet are parallel, which again is just the way I kind of naturally did it, I would then big push, and then I would immediately. It's not even a push, then try and move forward. I would just kind of sprint into the, just it's literally everything I got. I have definitely done the thing where like if I'm the loose head or the tight head or whatever, my outside leg is pinned back and like just is in a strong position, and everything kind of pivots around it, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Definitely not moving forward. But yeah, the one where you start off where your outside foot is a little forward of your inside foot, I found that actually sort of weakens. Now again, it's maybe because I don't play it a lot. You know what I mean? Like I'm just not used to it. But I found it gave me. I lost all my push initially, and it didn't really give me the benefit of any kind of like sprinting forward because I lost my push. Again, we could chalk it up to the fact that I just simply don't use it that often, and I don't know how to utilize it properly.
I mean, it definitely does give you a weaker initial push, and that's why it is not something you should like use regularly. It's something that you want to use when it's effective to use, which is against someone who you can beat. And your problem is not like, will I be able to beat this person? It's, will I be able to push them back like half a meter or 5 meters? Um, and that's when it's effective to use. Um, and I find that especially if you you can beat your positioning on the guy, that is another effective time, because when you're got that good positioning, it's about making sure you have that continuous pressure so you never lose that position.
Right.
There's a lot of times when when I first started propping, that I was severely outclassed by the opposing prop. But what would often happen is if they were not able to maintain the push, they would get me fucked up. They would like have to get their footing back. I would recover and stop them. Whereas props I saw who started doing that against me, they would just continually push me back, and I couldn't get it back into position, and I would just be completely fucked up. And so I would definitely say it is. I would definitely say it's not an ideal position for standard usage. You don't want to go into a first scrum of the game in that position ever,
No.
unless you've played against that prop like yesterday and you know exactly what they're capable of.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Right. Tournament play. But
Um,
so now, like I'd like to get into binding a little bit. We talked about binding to the hooker, and I have definitely noticed that like if you're loose even in a little bit, the scrum one has like no strength. You really do have to hip to hip get in there nice and tight. I have been shown a couple of times. We've had like a scrum coach come in where they divided up the scrum. You'll remember
In
this.
the two triangles.
Yeah, that never cottoned with me. Like, what do you think about that Let's explain the two triangles also, maybe just for folks.
What are you talking about? Just say two triangles. Everyone
The two
knows.
triangles, it's clear, it's perfectly clear.
So the idea of this scrum is there are two sort of triangle pods that form that each are semi-independent, and that is the hooker, the prop, and the lock. And then on the other side, you have the hooker, and the prop, and the lock as well. And so these are the two sort of like engines of the scrum, where you want to have, you know, a triangle of the lock, hooker, and prop bound really tightly together, and then the other one on the other side of, once again, the hooker, but the other lock and the other prop. And it has never really worked for me. I remember we had the scrum coach who did it, and we were just like, and then we were trying to do it against an opposing scrum. One of the few times we actually had a practice against another scrum, and we were just losing other scrum, every single scrum, horribly. And then we're like, fuck it, let's go back to, you know, our usual way. And then we were winning every scrum. So I can't really comment on it. I found it never really worked for me. And I think that's important for a lot of things, is you have to find what works for you and what works for your team. I've definitely seen teams that are more skilled than our team lose because they have like the New Zealand playbook. And it's like, this is what the All Blacks do, so we're going to do this too. And I'm like, right, but you're not the All Blacks.
There's a distinct lack of backing, depth of talent.
And not even necessarily talent, like part of the reason why specific teams use specific strategies is because they have the players that execute that strategy really well. You can, you know, have, you know, like the objectively best strategy in the game, but if it's not one that's suited to your teammates, it's not going to work. Now, certainly, you know, on a national level, usually if you're a big country or a big rugby country, you probably got enough talent that you can select the players and pull out whatever strategy you want. But on a club level, that is not the case. These are the players you got. Like you got, you know, the 45-year-old prop who hasn't like gone to the gym in 5 years. You know, you got like the 18-year-old wing who's like skinny as a beanpole and is like, what contact? I just run really fast.
It's true. No, or yeah, like a whole bunch of old boys who are like, well, we just need numbers, so they're in here. You're not playing flying Fijian rugby with those guys. You know what I mean? Maybe.
And so, yeah, the best strategy is going to be one that works with your strengths as a team. And so, yeah, we've beaten teams that were really, like, they had better rugby skills than us, but they were trying to do a play that just did not suit their team. And it's like, why are you doing that? Like, you're doing this like big, like running, like trying to like get out to the wing and like run around our players when your like winger is like 300 pounds. Like,
no, and it's true. At that point, you're just like, dude, just grind up, just like phase after phase of like, pick and goes, and just make it simple and functional. You know?
And I've seen the opposite too, where like there's this team of like skinny guys who then decide to like try to maul me, and I'm like 5 of you combined make my weight. What are you doing?
I've held up a maul like that where it's just me, and I'm like, guys, anyone else coming into this?
And we're like, no, you're fine. Like,
yeah, they're like, no, go ahead, you got this. No, and it's true. You're absolutely right. Like picking the strategy for your team. But okay, so if we're picking a strategy for a team that you have, working with what you've got, how do you train them, man? How do you train for a scrum? Because it's tough, dude, because you never have scrums to train against. Let's be honest.
I mean, you do. They're called games.
Yeah. No, and it's true. It's trial by fire. I mean, that's why the scrum machine was fucking invented, man. Because not even, like, you know what I mean? They didn't invent a machine to try and compensate for the fact that you will not have an entire other scrum kicking around as spares, right, during practice.
I mean, some things you can do is really just, I find that even just if you get two people to practice, like basically like sort of more rucking than scrumming against two other people, like four people bound together, that really helps you focus on like, am I staying bound? Are
Right.
we staying tight? It really helps you focus on what's this position. Because I mean, in an actual ruck, it's so messy that you don't
Yeah.
really get to use a lot of your scrum skills. Sometimes you do. There's always that great time where you really get underneath the person, you pop them up. But as a prop, I mean, perhaps your strength is flexibility, and you are one of those props who gets low in the rucks and like gets underneath them and has perfect technique and pops them up and then wins the ruck. I have won a lot of rucks, and I have never won a ruck like that. Like I just go in, and they're like, if I see that they are low and I can't get lower than them, I'm not even going to try to get low. I am just going to hit them with my legs and knock them out of the way. And you know what? It fucking works. Why? Because I am 380 pounds, and those fucking weaklings cannot stand up to it. Uh,
Also true, yeah. Despite the fact that you've said earlier that I'm flexible, I am very high in the rucks. My favorite, and I've done it only a few times, is just alligator rolling this super light dude. You know, like he's in there, he's set super low. I'm like, you motherfucker, you're athletic. But I'll come in and just hook in under his waist and just roll, and just my mass. And you can't see it again. We'll have to put it on YouTube. But I'm twirling around majestically. I fucking love alligator rolling out of a mall. Oh, out of a rock. It's just the best.
no, the best I find is when you just like, there's like three or four of them in there, and you just watch them like bounce off you in a way, and that is the best. You
That is
like
also
that.
very, very awesome. Yes.
Um, but yeah, so the point being that, you know, often for rucking, yes, technique is really important, but because rucks are so messy and fast, their technique matters a lot less. It's a lot less perfect. A scrum is very set. You do
Right.
like the fact that I can get away with not even trying to get low in a ruck, and it works, and we win the ruck often. This will not work for a scrum. You really need that sort of like setting together, and now that we are set and we are on even ground, now it's time to fight. And that makes a huge difference. And even if, you know, you're not fully bound, I found that just having that with like one other person beside you that you're focusing on binding, and if you let go of them, you lose, because, you know, that's your hooker. Your one job is protect your hooker.
You only got one job.
You've got some like other jobs. It's your highest priority. It's your most important job. Like if you protect the hooker, you get pushed back 10 meters and they score a try, or like 50 meters. The scrum is at center. You get pushed back 50 meters, they score a try. But you protected your hooker. Will I say you did all of your job as a prop? Probably not.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe your last time in the front row.
Sure, you protected your hooker, which is much better than, you know, like letting your hooker break their neck. Like, great, sure. Like, you know, more important than not breaking necks, more important than winning rugby.
Yeah. No, and it's true. Like there was one anecdotal. I'm just gonna throw this in now because I'm fairly deep into the Smirnoff Ice here. But one thing that was great, I don't like the hooker that I'm gonna talk about. This guy, I fucking do not dig this dude. But one thing he did great as a hooker is he would, and you'll remember this, he would have us bind up, and then he'd call for seconds, he'd say sink, and then the other team would sort of sink a bit, and then he'd go sink. And then we'd sink just a little bit fucking lower. And oh my God, it was so great because they had already sort of set up, and they, you know, like it threw them off, and it was so great. And it was a nice, you know, we were tightly bound. And I'm not sure why I said that, but it's a neat anecdote. I'm gonna stick with that, just as far as strategy goes, just fucking with them. But yeah, seriously, fuck that other dude though. That hooker sucks, but he was a good hooker. I may not agree.
You know, sometimes you can't respect people's play or as people, but you can still respect them as teammates.
True. He was a good hooker. Which, fine, fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely people on my team who would I be friends with outside of rugby? No, but you know, they're my teammate, and I respect them as players, even if I don't really like them as people. But if you're listening to this podcast, you're definitely one of the people I like. Just for the record.
There you go. But I mean, that's also kind of the good part about rugby too. Is like it still would bring you together to interact and fight towards a common goal. I guess whatever, blah blah blah. Fucking fuck those guys. Whatever, they're on my team. But yes, so I've gotten a little antsy. I feel got a little bit of liquor in me. Gotten a little antsy. So okay, now we covered a bit of the dirty scrummaging. Let's talk about tricks of the trade, my friend. A little recap in case someone's coming in too. Let's do that. And then I feel like we'll call it because we've already talked an hour about this and we still have more that I definitely want to touch on. So we're going to make this a two-parter. Okay? But yes, let's oh yeah, look at that. We've got so much more to talk about. I love this. This is now one of my favorite episodes.
All the other ones before, total crap. If you enjoyed them, you're wrong.
Okay. This is the shit. Okay, so tricks of the trade. Let's talk tricks, Dan. Tell me your secrets. Tell all the young props their secrets.
I've already told a lot of them. Really, as loose head, you want to, without actually like separating from your hooker, because you always want to keep your hooker, you want to use your advantage of positioning to really drive in. Wheeling a scrum is not as advantageous now as it was before.
True.
So because before, like, you wheel a scrum, like, boom, like you're golden. That's the goal of a scrum. Wheel it, and you're wonderful. And I got really good at wheeling scrums, and they changed the laws. And it's like, wheeling scrums is not really good anymore. I'm like, but
yeah, like you can only wheel 90 max, and then like I remember just dominating and just obliterating scrums like in a big broad sweeping motion. Apparently, that's not a thing we do anymore, Dan.
It is not. I mean, and it is unsafe because when you're wheeling, it is very easy for people to lose their footing, for scrums to go down. And so it's one of those things where part of me is like, it was so much fun, I miss it. The other part of me is like, yeah, it was probably the right decision to ban it.
Yeah, no, well, they're not wrong, Dan. They're not wrong, and it's true. And we do, props. We're good guys. We don't want to kill anyone, or even really injure them too much. But yeah, but yeah, like the whole wheeling rules, it's gotten a little complicated. Well, yes. It is and it isn't. I don't know, but it's not as simple as it was, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at.
No, I mean, certainly, yeah. I mean, the rules have always been more or less, you have to push straight. You can't bore in.
Right.
And you can still, like, wheeling isn't exactly a penalty, but it's not exactly an advantage anymore. So, yeah. Anyway, the point being that you still want to use the fact that you have the advantage to get a little bit of a wheel, because that will push them back. And allow you to get the ball. And then you want to stop. You want to get their prop into a bad position so that ideally your loose head, if you're going to be able to push it down the pitch, is going to be able to push through because their tight head prop is taken out because you're in a good position.
Right.
So really, ideally, as a loose head, what I like doing is I like getting that very quick, not actually boring in, but using my position to bore in. But I'm still parallel. I'm still going straight. I'm still tightly bound to my hooker.
Right.
So it's not like, because if you actually look at old scrums, where they were really boring, where like the loose head was, like very loosely bound.
Oh yeah,
he's really like driving and really driving into the tight head. And that's actually very dangerous for your hooker. If you look at a lot of old plays, they really sort of like, well, this is dangerous, but it might help us win, and winning is more important than our own safety.
Number 8 ran over one of these scrums. I remember. Do you remember that clip?
I remember that clip.
Crazy, dude.
Yeah. Rugby is important. Life is importanter.
Yes, true.
So yeah, but really you want to use that positioning to just get the person off balance, and then don't keep pushing, because wheeling is not really advantageous unless you unless you're really losing the scrum, and you can make sure you not and that you can make sure you're going fully straight so that you're not um, really looking like you're coming in from the side. It looks like you're trying to push straight because
Right.
even as they wheel, you can't really turn with them all that much. You really want to be looking like you're going absolutely straight. I mean, you obviously have to turn with them. You can't just like keep going straight. The scrum separates. You really don't want to look like you're actually starting the turn. You want to look like you're following the opposing prop because I mean, most referees do not really know what you look like as a prop, but they can see when you're boring in usually. I've definitely had refs that don't. Uh, I definitely have refs like, look, the other prop is boring in. You should look at that. He's like, what's boring in? I'm like, oh,
You're like, okay,
oh,
this is how
you're
it's gonna
a, but you want like really you want to make sure that you that you can use your advantage to really get that 1 second pop because that is the most important part of the scrum.
Yeah.
You get that like initial like half a meter and you've won the scrum and if you like if after that you don't get any more distance like who cares, you've won the ball. That's the most important thing.
It's true.
Well actually well you know I shouldn't say who cares because actually it is good. You're getting their backs on their back foot so they're having to move backwards and then they're it's really tiring to push against someone who's winning a scrum. Much more tiring than to be winning a scrum.
It's true. No, and you know what? Like there's something I go, and I'm not as technique driven as you are, Dan. I will bore sometimes, but I gotta say, like I will just go 100%. And I want to talk to you about communicating between props because I've never been good at it. I just gotta go 100% and try not to wheel it too bad. But yeah, you're absolutely right. When you are going and you've got a bit of a roll going, and they're on their back foot, you are also taking 7 to 8 of their players along for a ride. And it's really hard. I can only imagine for like fucking flankers who are barely even attached to the thing. To try and move backwards if you're getting driven back. Like that's gotta be really difficult, right?
I mean,
Again,
and
as a
there's a
prop,
reason why, like, when you're pushing back, often the back row of the scrum will collapse, which is
yeah,
a much safer way to collapse than if the front row of the scrum collapses, so that's really unsafe. Because
that's
then you got the hookers next going like down,
down.
and you know you can it's very dangerous, and because all the pressure in the scrum is on the hooker, and so if that hooker starts being angled down, like all that pressure is starting to go on their neck, and that's just a recipe for disaster. But if you're pushing back, what it's the people who are going to collapse are actually like the 8-man or the flankers,
Yeah,
and then you really taken all of their forwards out of the play,
yep.
whereas you're still standing. Either you've fallen on top of them, in which case you're still going to get up first. Uh,
It's true. That's a fair bit of weight on them.
I have definitely, after like winning a scrum really badly, just like collapse on top of them, and then they're like, "Oh, this is a chance for me to like slowly get up because this is rest for me," and I'm taking their players out, and I'm still getting up. I'm just slowly, and like I could tell the other prop knew what I was doing, and he didn't really fault me for it because he was tired too.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, no,
Like,
okay, I know you're gonna take your time. I'll take my time too.
like we're you know we're taking each other out of the play. You'll like whether we got up fast, we got up slow, you get an extra 2 seconds. So you know like just take your time is still that extra 2 seconds that you get whether you go fast or slow. Uh,
So true.
um,
But I mean, like, okay, now let's talk about, and I'm kind of jumping around. Let's talk about scrums collapsing because that's actually something it's a fairly serious ordeal.
it is.
When it does
If the
happen.
scrums collapse in the front row, that is super serious. If the scrums collapse in the back row, like whatever. But yes, if the scrums collapse in the back row, the worst that happens is like you know the flanker or the number 8 is going to have a whole bunch of weight on top of them. Meh.
Yeah,
Uh,
really fine. But in the front, like a lot of the times, what happens is, you'll lose a footing.
uh-huh.
You kind of slip a bit, or if it's you're not quite purchased right, or the angle's just a little off, and you go down. You gotta shout, Mayday or whatever, because sometimes it happens so fucking fast, too, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've got all that force, and you can shout out to the ref, but it'll be a few seconds. So, and it gets hairy. Like you're trying to, like you said, you're trying to protect your hooker, and you're trying to sort of lift them up a bit, but you're on the ground, your shoulders on the ground. It's fucking crazy when that happens,
Mhm.
What do you like? What's the gnarliest collapse that you've had? Like, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you as a tight head deal with that? Loose head is a little easier, like you just kind of stand up. You're not fully bound in, right?
Yeah.
You know.
As a tight head, really, I I've definitely had an opposing prop lose their footing and sort of like fallen on top of them, and really like in a tight head in that situation, it's not the worst. You want to make sure that once again, because their prop has gone down, that you're taking care of your hooker on the way down because their hooker hasn't gone down. You don't want to be yanking your hooker around because that's just a recipe for hurting your hooker. Um, you want to really just sort of like as you're going, making sure your hooker is still straight, is still going in. And then sometimes if you need to disengage because you're just going to fall flat on your face, and you've also taken out the other prop, so you don't have to worry about that happening. The other prop going into your hooker. Because I've done that to opposing hookers before, where I have like split off the loose head, and then the loose head sort of falls over, and then I just drive in against the hooker, and that's really bad for the hooker. You don't want that happening to your hooker. You want that happening to their hooker.
Rough. Yeah, that's a rough day right there.
So yeah, but really, I mean, like, yeah. So if you're the tight head, their loose head goes down. Try to keep your feet. Try to bind in against. Try to keep your feet and keep bound to your hooker. Uh, but make sure you're not jostling your hooker and trying to pull him down because his neck is still in it,
Yeah.
even when yours has come out. If you basically like pull your hooker down with you, his head is going against their hooker and being pushed against their hooker and twisting his neck into all sorts of bad positions, and that's just not good. Ideally, you want to keep supporting him, but if you need to let go and let the hooker just be like, "Yep, the scrum is starting to collapse," but I'm not.
God, it
Yeah,
must suck to be a hooker, huh?
I mean, the hooker in some ways is for some people's most fun position in the scrum because they have all these people whose job is protect them, and they get to like sort of float there and like hook balls. And when they win the scrum, it's because they are the ones who hooked it. Because like in my mind, I'm a prop. Like when we win the scrum, it's because I pushed. But
Right.
like that's the way it is in my mind. In my mind, the hooker's hooking the ball. If I pushed, like he doesn't even need to. He steps
Right.
over it, like whatever.
We just
In
mow
my
over.
mind, and if we lose it, it's because I didn't push enough. So in my mind, the props are the ones who win the scrum or not, and the hooker is just sort of there and useless.
Hanging on.
Yeah, but I know intellectually that's not true. Uh,
Because we're an intellectual sort. We just ignore it as we drink beer and push on.
so yeah, the hooker is there, like the one really hooking the ball, the one who is the center of attention of the scrum. All of that scrum is there to support the hooker a bit, make sure the hooker is in a position to hook the ball back, and then afterwards protect the ball the hooker hooked back. So the hooker definitely attracts a type of person who really wants to be the center of attention, really wants to be the one. And the same with the scrum half is sort of like the people of the Napoleon complex. The hooker is the fat Napoleon complex. The same sort of people, because scrum half to me sounds like a fucking awful position. Like, you're just there pulling the ball out, like screaming at people, like, you're just doing the same thing over and over.
They're not listening.
Yeah, it's just like, but if you have a Napoleon complex, you're like, yeah, I'm the one who always gets the ball out. I scream at people what to do, and like everything relies on me. Whereas in my mind, like the scrum half, you can replace scrum half with almost anyone. They just throw the ball out, and then I get the ball. I do something important. That's the way. That's the way it is in my brain.
Oh.
But the hooker and the scrum half are both in charge positions, and they both in rugby are positions for shorter people. So you get a lot of Napoleon complexes, and they love being hookers.
That is true. I mean, look, honestly, as a prop, you got to listen to your hooker because they're going to call all sorts of stuff. And, like your job is to listen to the little man beside you whose feet aren't touching the ground when they bind it on top of your shoulder.
You think of the hooker like middle management. Sure, they're useless, but you have to listen to them anyway.
Exactly. There. Oh, you thought all the front row were yeah, no, we're gonna pick on the hooker a little bit. Oh my gosh. All right. So is there anything else we want to chat about, Dan? I think so. We have, like I said, we have so much more that we're going to talk about. I could talk about scrums all day. I think, is there any other key points before we sign off for part 2, I guess? What can you think of?
I can't really think of anything. I'm gonna go through my notes. I mean, okay, I didn't tell that one story that I wanted to tell.
Tell
But
the story, Dan.
okay.
I'm like my third Smirnoff Ice. Tell the story.
um
Proud.
so one game I was not in the lineout and I had no fucking clue what was going on. Because it's like, oh, they're like, we've already got a lineout. Daniel, you're like 10 meters back. I'm like, what?
Where do I go?
And then like, okay, I guess I'm in a line here. And I'm like, well, I'm the one forward not in the line out. So like I can't form a pod or anything. Do I go in with the backs? And then they're like,
man, were you like with the 10 or like what?
I didn't know. I understanding like I was basically end up staying at the edge of the line. I'm like, okay, if the line out like, and so I ended up actually without even realizing it, completely cheating, but it working out because the ref wasn't expecting it. Because basically, as soon as the ball was thrown, and I saw it going over all the people. I'm like, oh, this is gonna go. I just ran forward and got the ball, and then the ref didn't see me doing that. He's like, well, I can't prove that he was offside, so he didn't call me offside. And I didn't even really realize it was offside because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm always in the lineup. I'm like 380 pounds. Like, why would like I'm
Who's
never
gonna
not
stop me?
Yeah. Like, you want me like in the lineout lifting. But this team didn't because they had their lineout and I was subbing for another team. Anyway, so the point being is I managed to like get the ball on like a bounce. And then
Glory. Just fucking glory.
and like, yeah. And then afterwards, like the ref is like, I mean, as when you're in the lineup, the rest of the team can't join it intellectually, but like when you're out of the lineup, you watch that ball throw and you're like, I gotta be there. I gotta be there. And so,
right.
To me, it was sort of like I'm used to like the penalty kick, where as soon as the ball leaves the foot, you run forward. And that's what I did. And the ref is like start realizing like, hey, this guy's just like completely offside during a lineout. But I still never got called offside because once he realized it, then he started telling me like, you have to wait for my arm to go down. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how you know. And I'd still be there. Like, when does the arm go down? When does the arm go down? When does the arm go down?
Oh my God. Amazing.
And that's the story of the one game where I wasn't in the lineout and broke the rules and made some amazing plays because I cheated without realizing it because I've never not been in a lineout.
Right. The unintentional cheating of this prop just running amok. I love it. There was I was watching the the Saints. I've just gotten into Premier League rugby amazingly. And I was watching the Saints and they had something like that where like out of a line out, but their tight head fucking grabbed the ball from somewhere. He wasn't in the line out. I'm like, where are you? Where did you come from? And literally the other team, now it was the Saracens or something. They were like, what the fuck is happening? So I just imagine, oh, what a great story, Dad. I just imagine you just running amok and like all the backs, just be like, what the fuck is this guy doing? He's too big. Oh my God. Brilliant. Well, that's a great story to end on, Dan. Thank you. So we're gonna call it. I gotta go to the bathroom. I'm a little drunk. But so next week we're gonna do part 2 of Sir. Time. How much time? See, that's pretty
79
good.
minutes left.
Yeah. So, we're 3 minutes in, son. You can make it. But yeah, so we'll talk about a whole lot of other stuff because we got a lot of great content coming. So this is great. This is a great 2-part episode, Dan. Thank you so much. This has been great. I love this one.
Oh, thank you, Caleb. I'm glad we could do your scrums justice.
Oh, I miss scrumming with you, buddy. It'll happen again. I know it will.
It'll happen again.
Here. but it'll happen again.
Just you'll be like walking down the street and suddenly you'll feel like kosher salt be sprinkled on you, like kosher salt. You're like, Dan, and then boom.
It's time, it's happening. Brilliant. Okay, well, that's your new nickname, Kosher Salt.
Hi, this is Caleb and Kosher Salt signing off.
I love it. Alrighty, Dan. Well, this is Dan and Caleb signing off for Propspectives. We'll see you next week. This will be uploaded some point. This is part 1 of Sir, How Much Time Is Left? Say goodbye, Dan.
Goodbye, Dan.
Goodbye, Dan.